And then we'll get started. So thank you so much. Again, I'm Amy Birch. I'm a transportation engineer that works for NDOT to help facilitate the traffic calming program. So we're here tonight to talk about the traffic calming project on Madison Boulevard. So appreciate your time and joining us online. Let's see. So I'm first going to go over some background information, like Councilwoman said, and then we'll talk about the plan that's proposed and next steps. So first of all, what is traffic calming? So we all often talk about what this is as in terms of residential streets. So we specifically target residential streets through this program, and it's really physical solutions that encourage lower speeds over the length of the street. And we're targeting speed reduction with this program. The 3 E's of traffic calming are education, enforcement, and engineering. Education, part of that we do through these meetings. We educate you all on why we think traffic calming is appropriate for your street and how you should navigate the traffic calming on a street. Enforcement is the job that the police department does. We know that they have a big job and cannot be on every residential street that feels that they're speeding on their street every day, 24 hours a day. So that's where the engineering comes in, and that's what this program primarily focuses on. How do we modify the street through several different types of measures? How do we modify the street to change driver behavior and encourage slower speeds? And we do this because we have an eye towards safety and Vision Zero. Vision Zero is the goal of 0 deaths on the roadways. And that's what NDOT is targeting, and this program falls under that goal. And this graphic here is incredibly compelling to us because we see that as the vehicle speed increases, a pedestrian's chance of survival decreases dramatically. So at 25 miles per hour, a pedestrian has an 89% chance of survival. And then as that goes up to 45 miles per hour, that chance of survival for a pedestrian, if they're struck by a vehicle, goes down to 35%. So we know there's a strong correlation between speed and safety. And another key part about speed is that, as you're driving and if you're driving at a higher speed, you have less time to react to something and slow down and stop and avoid a collision. So if we're driving at a slower speed, like 25 miles per hour, those crashes can be avoided most times. And if they do occur, they are less severe. So we're really focused on the safety part of this program, or this program. So like Councilwoman Benedict said, this is a sort of neighborhood-driven program, meaning that we accept applications for traffic calming, and there's really a high demand for traffic calming in Davidson County. As of our last selection, which was in August, we had over 500 neighborhood streets that had requested traffic calming on their street. So in the summer of 2023, NDOT selected 85 neighborhood streets for traffic calming. And so Madison Boulevard was one of those 85 streets that was selected. This map on the right is showing the pink purplish lines, and that is identifying where streets have applied for traffic calming. So this is just to give you an idea of where they're spread out throughout the county and how much demand there is. Outside of the traffic calming program, we always like to point out the hub Nashville, and how you can access various departments within Metro. So if you have a service request need, like your trash didn't get picked up, the street light is out, or the traffic signal's blinking, and things like that, you can report that to the hub, and that's by calling 311, or there's online hub.Nashville.gov, or you can even download an app to your smartphone and make that request. And what the hub does is gets that need, that citizen need, to the right department, to the right person in the department, and gets that resolved or questions answered. So just a great resource. If you're not familiar with it, definitely check it out. And when you make a service request, you get a service request number. So it's something you can follow up on if that's needed too. So it's not just NDOT, it's Metro Water Services, NES as well. So back to traffic calming. So I told you that we had over 500 streets that had requested traffic calming in our last round of selection. So how do we go from that many that are requesting and demand to a selection of those with the greatest needs? So we have this program has a prioritization methodology that focuses on 5 main criteria. And what we do is we collect data on every street that requests traffic calming, and then compare those streets and select those that score the highest. So that 5 criteria is weighted differently, but speed is the primary component of this scoring system. And so what we do is we measure the speed on a street that requests traffic calming, and we compare that to what our desired speed is on a residential street, which is 25 miles per hour. And then we're also looking, so the speed is worth 45%. Then we're also looking at volume, which is worth 25% of the score. We also look at other things like trip destinations, where we would expect pedestrians to be walking to and from that street. So if there are nearby destinations like schools and libraries and parks and community centers, we take that into consideration because we think they're going to generate pedestrian trips from the nearby residential street. We're also looking at whether there are other multimodal or non-driver accommodations on the street. If there's a lack of sidewalks, then that gets points in the scoring metrics. If there are bikeways on the street or bus routes and bus stops nearby, we factor that into that criteria. And we also look back at historical data to determine if there have been any pedestrian or bicycle crashes, injuries, and fatalities on that street, and that tells us that there's possibly something that needs to be addressed through reduced speeding. So, and that one is worth 10% of the score. So what we do is we rank every street that applies, and then based on funding that's allocated through council and the department, we select the number of streets at that time. So our application window is 2 times a year. So we typically will select in batches 2 times per year. So Madison Blvd was selected in the August 23 selection. So let's talk about Madison Blvd and some of the statistics on your street that came from that prioritization process that I talked about. Just because I think oftentimes you want to know, like, what are the stats on your street. And we measured the 85th percentile speed on Madison Blvd to be 38 miles per hour, where the posted speed limit is 25. And I'll explain the 85th percentile speed. That's a measurement that we traffic engineers often use to give us an idea of what the prevailing speeds are on a street. But essentially it means that 85% of the traffic across the period of a day is driving that speed or below. And then 15% is actually going higher than that speed. So we measured 38 miles per hour on Madison Blvd, which is pretty high for a street with the characteristics that that it has, which is no sidewalks. It's a local residential street. It's pretty narrow. It's 20 feet wide. And then that daily volume, we measured to be about 8550, so 1,850 vehicles per day. And that's the combination of both directions of travel. So that's pretty high for a street that, you know, doesn't feed a whole lot of other streets. So that tells us there's probably a little bit cut through traffic. And that is probably expected based on the way the street makes the connection between Gallatin and Neely's Bend to probably cut through and head down Neely's Bend or vice versa. So that volume does look a little high to us. So this map is showing the limits of our project. I've highlighted Madison Boulevard in yellow. It is it's also, this map comes from NDOT's online tracker map for the traffic calming program. And so I've put the legend in the bottom left, but we're showing just a snapshot nearby Madison Boulevard and showing you that there are other streets that have applied for traffic calming. They have not yet been selected. There's several streets that have traffic calming that's gone through the process. It's been installed. You're probably familiar with these streets: Idlewild and Hickory and Maple, and over on the west side of Gallatin is the Gibson Drive that kind of parallels Gallatin Road. So those have been installed, and then the green streets are those that are in progress. So Emmett Avenue nearby has sort of is in the process. I think it's waiting for the traffic calming plan to be constructed and installed. So that's where
Amy, can I jump in there? So one of the concerns that people have is that if we put traffic calming measures on one street, it's going to divert traffic onto the other. And so Emmett has been approved, and as Amy said, we're waiting for the installation of it. It should be installed anytime. It's one of the top ones on the list, next in the queue to be installed. And so by getting Madison Boulevard completed as well, that's going to help us for sure in making sure that cars are not doing that cut through that Amy described over to Neely's Bend. That's going to encourage them to stay on Gallatin to go to Neely's Bend.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a great point. Thank you. Okay, so now I'd like to talk about our toolkit. And our first slide in our toolkit is about speed cushions, and you are likely pretty familiar with these devices as there are several installed nearby on your nearby residential streets. But these are rubberized devices that are modular, and so we have the ability to kind of configure them in a number of arrangements. But the speed cushion part of the name is kind of alluding to that they're like lumps and have these gaps between them, which better accommodates emergency response vehicles. But the width of each cushion is wide enough such that a passenger car cannot fully straddle them. So those fire trucks and ambulances, they have a slightly wider wheelbase than a passenger car or even a pickup truck. And so they don't have quite as much impact as having to slow down to navigate the devices. So that's why NDOT likes to use this type of arrangement and this tool the most. So as we're showing in these different pictures, they're about 3 inches high. They're 6 feet wide, and we arrange them in different lengths of either 7 feet long, and that's in the direction of travel, the vehicle's travel, or 10.5 feet long or 14 feet long, depending on the characteristics of the road. They'll have markings on them like you see in these pictures, white markings and arrows showing the direction of travel. Or if a street has center line and it's wide enough, we need to put 3 across the width of the street, then they would have the markings for the center line as well. We will always install warning signage with these devices. So that picture in the top left of your screen is showing the warning sign that says speed cushions with an advisory speed plaque of 20 miles per hour. And then the picture on the bottom left is just showing that profile view to give you a look at what that looks like. And like I said, we can arrange them in a number of different ways depending on how wide the road is, what the striping pattern on the road is, or if there is striping on the street or not. The bottom right shows the flexible delineator posts, those white posts that NDOT uses a lot with bikeways and such to protect the bikeway, keep drivers from driving around it, and leaving that width open for cyclists in that bikeway. So we'll use a number of techniques to get drivers to drive over them the correct way. Now, when we lay these devices out, these speed cushions, we will put them in a series. So we don't just put one device out in the middle of the street and not any others along the rest of the length, because we understand that drivers would probably continue to drive as they do, speeding, and then maybe slow down really fast at one device and then carry on fast again after they've crossed it. We put these in a series, spacing around 400 feet, 500 feet apart to get drivers to maintain a consistent speed along the length of the street. And then as they are navigating the street, when they see the next set coming up ahead, then they're not encouraged to speed back up again. So that's kind of why we put them out in a series like that. Also, another thing about these is we're looking at where driveways and intersections are as we identify the placement of speed cushion sets, because we don't want them to be right at the back of someone's driveway that's causing a nuisance for you, or you're having to back over them sideways or something like that. So that's a piece that we're looking at as we design the plan. Also, another thing that we need to pay attention to is whether there's curves or like curvature of the road, either that's vertical, like steep hills. We have to avoid those because we just can't install these cushions on hills and in curves. So those are some things that we pay attention to as we're making the design. Speed tables are made of a similar material, or the same material, I should say, and but they have a similar outcome in terms of slowing drivers. As you see, they'll have the pivot markings, but they stretch the whole width of the street, so they do have a little bit more impact to emergency vehicle response times. And so we don't use these as much because the speed cushions are so effective. And so, but we do like to show that it's something that we have in our toolbox. So vertical measures and our local impact. This is a slide showing a comparison of these vertical measures, the speed cushions that NDOT has installed in a number of locations across the county. And so we want to show like what is the before and after comparison. So the graph on the left is the average speed comparison. So in this study, we found that the before speed averaged at 31 miles per hour, and the after speed after the cushions were installed was 22 miles per hour. And the yellow line across is showing what the speed limit is 25 miles per hour. And then the graph on the right is the 85th percentile speed. And the average speed of these streets we measured was 37 miles per hour before, or the 85th percentile speed was 37 miles per hour before, and then after the cushions were installed was 25 miles per hour. So we see that this is very effective. These are very effective tools. And so, you know, know that there's national data that says they're effective, but NDOT really wanted to know how they are working on our streets. Another tool in our toolbox are radar feedback signs. We use these in places oftentimes where the vertical measures are not possible, like there's curvature or something that we can't necessarily install those cushions on. And so you probably seen more of these out as you're driving in Nashville now. NDOT has installed these in a number of locations on streets that have higher volumes and that don't qualify for the vertical measure traffic calming. These are also used there. And comparison of the before and after when these have been installed, we saw average reduction of 6 miles per hour on for the average speed and an average reduction of 7 miles per hour for the 85th percentile speed. So essentially it's reading the speed of the cars as they approach and flashing your speed if you're going above the posted speed limit. We also use pavement markings to visually narrow the street when we have streets that might be wider than necessary. So on the left, that street had white edge lines added to the street. And then on the right, the center line as well. Bulb outs and chicanes are tools that we use using paint and these flexible delineator posts to narrow a street, maybe at an intersection to slow vehicles down and reduce crossing distances for pedestrians. That's the bulb outs on the left, and on the right are pictures of chicanes. And so essentially this is using pavement markings and maybe alternating parking from side to side on the street, and that adds curvature to a street that's otherwise straight. So you can see that picture on the top where the parking's on one side of the street, so the roadway, the travel lanes kind of makes a curve around them, and so that horizontal deflection in the road requires drivers to slow as they navigate through that curvature. There's often limited locations where this is an applicable treatment, but we do like to show some of our tools so you know when you see them elsewhere. Traffic circles are devices that we build in the center of an intersection. This is an intersection treatment where we'll put a circular island in the middle of the intersection, and then drivers will navigate around the circular island. So that also creates horizontal deflection, which encourages drivers to slow down as they navigate through an intersection. But it's similar to a roundabout, but on a much smaller scale. So now I'm going to talk about our plan, and feel free to ask questions. You can put them in the chat box or unmute yourself and ask questions as we go through this. This is meant to provide you with information about the proposed plan, but also get your feedback and support for the project, or if there feedback that you have, we want to hear that as we move forward. So I'm going to first orient us on the map here. North is up and Gallatin Pike is on the left side of your screen, and Neely's Bend is at the top. So I've highlighted Madison Boulevard in pink. And what we're showing and recommending for this street is the speed cushions to be installed in a series around 400 feet of spacing. And they would form kind of like the picture on the bottom left of the screen. So we would have a set of two, essentially one in each lane, and as you drive over it, you drive straight over the device. They'll have the warning signs like we talked about earlier to make sure that they're seen and visible. as drivers approach them. Also on the street, there is an always stop at Walnut. So we take that into consideration as part of our spacing, because drivers are stopping at the always stop. So we have 4 sets of cushions between Walnut and Gallatin Pike, and then 2 sets of cushions between Denison and Neely's Bend. And then because of the curvature, and I talked about this earlier, the curvature right there, we can't put a speed cushion in that section, but we're identifying to use a radar feedback sign as you are from Neely's Bend towards Gallatin, so that drivers that are they don't have to stop on Madison Boulevard, but would still see that the radar feedback sign. And so it would show your speed and only flash speed if you're going above the speed limit.
Amy, is that in both directions or just on the one side?
Just on the one side in that location, because in the opposite direction, if you're going from Gallatin towards Denison, that direction actually stops. It has a stop sign, but the direction coming from Neely's Bend does not. And I think that's because of sight distance and kind of a weird configuration of the street, geometric configuration of the street. So the stop sign is actually on, I guess it's from the west going to the north of Madison Boulevard. So just one side.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And also, I'll note in this white box, we identified that there was center line and edge line on Madison Boulevard. It's really faded. It's not really, doesn't really show up anymore. So we could refurbish those lines if that's desired by the neighborhood. So we put those back so it would look much like that picture on the bottom left. So are there any questions about this? I'll pause now and open it up to you all if you have any comments.
Yeah, hey, I've got a comment here. This is David Ketch. Was turning Denson and Madison Boulevard into an all-way stop, is that something that can be on the table with this plan, or?
Good question. Thanks, David. It's not, because our traffic calming program doesn't use always stops as a tool in our toolbox. We reserve that for traffic control when it's warranted and needed, but you can certainly make a request for an always stop there through the hub, and the engineers at NDOT will look into that, but it's not part of our plan, no, and not something that we're looking into. But we do believe that the cushions on either side, as well as the radar feedback sign, would slow vehicles.
Awesome, thanks.
Amy,
Mm-hmm.
Amy, could you give a quick overview of what an unwarranted stop is?
An unwarranted stop, sure.
I
Well,
can, whatever.
maybe I'll talk about a warranted stop. How about that?
Okay, okay.
What warrants a stop? An always stop, we look at a number of criteria, but the main data point that we're looking at and is required in industry standard and national standard is the volume. And those volume thresholds are pretty high, and they're for a long period of time. They have to be a certain number of volumes for 8 hours of a day. And this street does not appear to have that volume. It's pretty high. It's about 300 cars a day on the main street and 200 on the side street. Also, we do take into consideration whether there's pedestrians and cyclists. That volume is included. And then that's the volume warrants. There are also data points that we look at, whether there's been crashes at the intersection that could be corrected by an always stop. So that's part of that study and analysis to determine whether an always stop is needed. And as well as looking at whether there's visibility issues that can't be corrected through unless all vehicles are stopping at the intersection. So it's not just based on volume, but that's the main data point that is looked at.
Thank you for that explanation. I know that's not the area of expertise with which we work with you on. The reason why I said unwarranted is because I've heard that term used by NDOT before, and the way that they explained that to me, they explained everything that Amy just described. They also said that if there is a three-way stop in some places, and there's not traffic from any of the directions, then many times, and it really can become most often, people just roll through that stop sign. They might slow down for it, but if there's never a car, they actually won't go ahead and stop at it. So sometimes it makes things more dangerous because people don't stop and they get used to no cars at the intersection. So just FYI on that, David, but I think absolutely that's worth putting in Hub, and we can get NDOT out there to take a look.
You're absolutely right. It becomes habit forming when you feel like it's an unnecessary stop sign. Some drivers will roll through it, and then they're so used to doing it they forget, and then they don't look. So we do try to avoid unwarranted stop signs for that. We use them in our industry for traffic control when that volume is high enough, or there's some other reason why everyone needs to stop at the intersection. So thank you.
Can I jump in on that for something?
Yes.
Hi, Paige Penniger. We're Zach and I 328 Madison Boulevard, so right at the curvature, like right where the radar feedback sign. A note on what you guys were just talking about. We see people fly through it all the time because we live right there. So we actually submitted to Hub Nashville multiple times, and they pretty quickly came out and did like I don't know what the proper term is, where they evaluate things. And they did put a sign on the stop sign like a month ago, in like making it clearer that oncoming traffic does not stop. So again, David or whoever else, I think the more you report to Hub Nashville, the more they pay attention to it. I was impressed by how quickly they responded to that.
Great.
That was more of a comment. Question. So being that we are on that curvature, and my home office window is in the front, so I see people going 50 like all the time. It's ridiculous. There's a school bus stop right across from our house, and I'm just like holding my breath. For the radar feedback sign, I know you said it's not going to face both directions. Just to clarify, it's gonna, if you're coming from Neely's, it would show your speed rather than coming from Gallatin, correct? Okay.
Yes, that's the way it's shown. But you know, if that's something you're asking about, putting it in the other direction, we can talk
No,
about that.
I think that is the predominant direction. Like people go faster coming from Neely's than they do coming from Gallatin. But I will say, and I'm sure there are people in this call who live at that the always stop. People don't stop. They don't stop at that stop sign. It's pretty bad. So I was going to ask, is there anything that you guys can do in this plan that will reinforce people actually stopping there? Because we can hear when people go through that stop sign because they're revving up and speeding past our house. So that was kind of a lot jumbled. The other question,
That's great. Go ahead.
the other question was just, do we get any say in where the radar feedback sign goes so that it doesn't block? We park our car on the street, so like that it doesn't block street parking directly from our house. So
yes, we can to answer your question, we can work with you on that. We have a lot of things that we're looking at, of course, with you know, we're sun exposure because they are typically solar powered, but right, we don't want to cause an issue. So I'd be happy to work with you on that. If you want to have my email address later on this slideshow. And so feel free to email me and we can coordinate on that. Because we will have
Amy,
later on, we'll have a more defined plan that will actually show how many feet the sign or the cushion is from something in the field that you can kind of see, and that's what gets posted on the website. We'll get to that part. But yes, we'd be happy to make sure that we're not causing more of an issue. So on your question about the stop sign and more either paint or signage or something to encourage drivers and get drivers to stop at the stop sign. I'll communicate with NDOT regarding that. And you're welcome to put it in the hub as well. Sounds like you maybe commented on that one also, but we're with the pavement markings that we would add to the street based on this plan that will, I think, help provide some definition to that intersection as well. And I will check and see if there's, stop ahead warning signs. I remember
Amy, I think a stop bar might be the way to go, among
Yes.
others, but I think that would be
I'm
most
pretty
helpful.
sure you guys live on the street, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it does have stop ahead pavement markings on the street leading up to the intersection.
It does coming from Neely's, yeah.
Neely's, yeah. Okay, so we'll look at it.
Thank you. One more follow-up question. So Emmett, the street that's kind of parallel to us, that's currently in progress with all of this. One thing that's been frustrating, because I mean, Emmett is worse in terms of the speeds from our experience. There are two of what appear to be outdated, like radar feedback signs on Emmett. I've lived here for almost 4 years and never seen them working. And so that I think already kind of puts a bad taste in my mouth of like, how much do we trust that this is all really gonna, come to fruition? So it's more just kind of, I know there's gonna be a follow-up meeting and there'll be a more specific plan, but how reliable are those things in terms of actually like working consistently? Because they're just there on Emmett, but don't ever flash or do anything.
If I could jump in, Amy, on that, the technology that we use today is definitely different and better. I did not know that those were not working, so I can put into Hub now to see if those can't be fixed before we go through the process of the installation of the calming measures that we've got there. But take a look at the radar sign that's on Neely's Bend as you head to the east at that curve. That's the new technology that we use, which is significantly better than the old signs that you're looking at. So, Amy, I'll let you take the rest from there if you've got more.
No, I think that's a perfect answer. Thank you. I'm not sure. I didn't do the plan for Emmett, so I can't speak to whether that plan included changing out the signs or not, but it's a good point. And if Councilwoman's going to put it in Hub, I think NDOT would probably handle that more under maintenance. But another issue with these can be the sunlight and making sure that the solar panel gets sufficient energy to work, or if they can be attached to electrical, they can be ground mounted or whatever. But so it's something for us to consider as we place these. So I agree, we do have better ones now. And they collect data, we're able to pull data from them, so they're better now. Any other questions? I do see one in the chat that someone joined late. Is our project moving forward on Madison? This project is funded, and so now we're just going through the process of working with the community to refine the plan if any edits to the plan are needed, and then demonstrate the support for the plan through our ballot process, which I'm going to get to in a couple of slides. it's basically a voting process, and then yes, it would move forward after that. So
Yeah, this is James Moore. I'd like to ask a few questions.
mhm.
Um, I'm a civil engineer. I've been living here for 20 years. I would recommend you look at the East Mead Avenue speed cushion because that's kind of a nice little jog curve there. So be careful where you put that one. Um, the edge striping and centerline striping would be great because I don't know that it's ever been here. But I am the one who's responsible, for better or worse, for everyone on this channel to call in for the four-way stop at Walnut and Madison Boulevard because there were 2 wrecks within 2 days, one almost going through a house. So they came out and did a really good job, came in and did everything. So I was happy with that. Um, I'm not a huge fan of speed cushions. I like speed tables better. I do understand fire and I would like you to look at the number of calls that the emergency services has to do down this road because it's quite a few. I'm pretty sure everyone can see that the fire truck comes down here probably once a week. So please try to take that into account. As far as, response time and how many, I'd hate to be the guy in the back of the ambulance getting jabbed with a needle when they hit these things because it's going to be dark. I did have a question of where you put out your data collectors to get all this data, and I did make a request about a week and a half before this meeting to try to get a look at this slide, but no one ever got back with me. So I am curious as to if there can be your data looked at before, your data looked at after, and see the effects on it.
Sure. We don't by habit do an after study on every street that gets traffic calming, but can certainly do that when requested. So we could do that, but it'll be after many months after it's installed. And as far as where it was the data was collected, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure right now, but I can certainly get that information.
The reason I bring that up is because there's a big difference in the traffic that continues straight through Denison and then comes through Madison Boulevard. And so if you just put all your traffic counting up there towards Neely's Bend, it's going to be significantly higher because of all the traffic that comes through Emmett into Denison and through. So I would like to know what that traffic count is between Gallatin and Denison to make sure that that meets your vehicles per day that you had up on a previous slide.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yep. However, I'll say that this was selected, this street was selected for traffic calming, and so we're moving through the process. And there's certainly a way to vote against the plan if you would like.
I just want to make sure it's done right and this is looked at correctly. I'm if it were up to me, there wouldn't be any of them because that's just I've like I said, I've lived here 20 years. There are things to do. I personally would love to see the striping happen and the stop bars, and see how that affects it first. I think the speed limit sign and the curve, that's only for people who are, maybe not paying attention. They go, oh yeah, I'm going too fast, and they pull down. And like I said, I've dealt with those for 15 years, and so they do help the conscientious driver. They do not help the person who's just wanting to fly around. So there are some other outstanding factors that I would like to see reviewed before we stick all these things in.
I'll be happy to send you that information.
Thank you.
Amy, could you speak to emergency vehicles and access with axle width?
Yes, so the speed cushions are 6 feet wide and the axles are typically wider than that. And so that's why we use these speed cushions most often in this program, because the ambulances and fire trucks are able to basically straddle these devices. So we do know that there's still some effect to the emergency vehicles, but they're largely able to carry on at a safe speed without it. So yes, the width of the cushions are 6 feet, and the axles are a bit wider, and it varies based on, you know, the type of vehicle, of course, but then a passenger vehicle is narrower, so they typically will have both wheels on the cushion to travel over it.
Thank you.
Another question. Are you at all involved in the process of when residential neighborhoods successfully get sidewalks put in or anything that protects pedestrians? Because we already have a fairly narrow street, and for putting in lines and all of that, like what would be your recommendation for those of us that walk down Madison Boulevard daily?
So I will
Yeah,
take
go
that
ahead.
one, Amy. So
Mhm.
when I was first elected in 2019, I chaired a special committee on sidewalks, and we looked at why does it take so long to build them? Why is the cost so high? And the main reason is because there's a few reasons. First, sidewalks are really expensive because we manage stormwater with them when we do them. So today and I don't think that there are many, if any, on Madison Boulevard, but usually you'll see drainage ditches and culverts under driveways and such. So we actually have to put in a pipe for that, and we put a pipe down the middle of the street as well, um, uh, typically 6 to 8 feet tall. And so we have to dig way down, put that in, and then get that storm water moving out of the way before we can put the sidewalk down. One of the things I looked at was, why can't we just throw some concrete down, right? And there's a couple of, instead of managing that stormwater that way. But when you begin to look at where those sidewalks would go, you're taking away from people's front yards. And so we have to buy right of way from people. And that process takes forever. And if one person on the street won't allow us to buy that right of way, then that stalls the entire process. So we have to get everybody's permission to do that, in addition to the expense with the stormwater. And then finally, one other thing, and this is important, but in the overall scheme of things, it's not the most important thing, but it takes out a ton of greenery, trees, shrubs, as a part of putting that down, because we have to follow ADA compliance. We can't have the sidewalks jog around trees and things like that. So again, that's kind of the more of an ancillary issue with that. But what I always try to do is set the expectation that the best thing we can do is slow cars down so that people can walk safely on our streets, because the likelihood we're going to get sidewalks is throughout this entire city is low. Places like Dickerson Pike, for instance, need sidewalks, and so we're going to focus more on our pikes that need sidewalks rather than our neighborhood streets, just because of the sheer volume of people and the danger. We have a priority sidewalk network, and so that's the best answer that I've got for you. I will say the mayor's transit plan that was announced last week does include sidewalk investment. So it includes bus investment and sidewalk investment. I'm actually working on an email to get information out to my mailing list now. And if anybody would like to join that mailing list, it's got 3,500 people on it. I'll put the website in the chat so you can sign up for it on that. But be on the lookout for that. The transit plan that'll be a November referendum does include significant funding for sidewalks throughout the city. Great question, and I would love to put in sidewalks everywhere. They are very expensive, and so it would take a significant amount of tax dollars to do that. And we want to be careful with the tax dollars that we collect, and also try to keep them to a minimum.
And that's why lack of sidewalks is part of the scoring criteria that we use to identify which residential streets have a greater need for traffic calming, because we know that lack of sidewalk, people are then walking on the street that don't have a sidewalk. So we want drivers to be driving slow. So that goes into that metric.
Thank you. Last question, I promise. I've been very looking forward to this meeting for a while. So thank you guys for having it and sending us all little postcards in the mail that's been on our fridge. For the painted lines, so, and this is just my own anecdotal stuff, like when I see a yellow lined road, I associate higher speed limits with that. So when you said, you know, bringing the painted lines back, like I kind of went like, ooh, like I don't like that. That's gonna make people think that this is a 35 like they do on Emmett, you know. And so do you guys have any data for what happens to a neighborhood street when you go from it looking like a true residential neighborhood street to a main road? That would be, any insight would be helpful.
So I don't have any data to show you the before and after, but we do use it more often on streets that have wider widths, and to create a lane for drivers. I mean, this picture isn't depicting what I'm explaining here, but we do hear that and understand that that concern about the lanes and the center line maybe makes it look like a more main street, major thoroughfare. And so that's why we want to have these meetings and get input. If that's something that maybe you want just the white lines and not the center line, then we can do that. That's why we're here talking about that, because we do hear that from other residential streets that they're not interested in the yellow lines. But the white line kind of defines that edge of road that makes it feel more narrow, you know, and we could do that without the center yellow line. I might ask the group, since we're talking about this and changes to the plan, is that something that you think would be more favorable to do the white edge lines and not the center line? There are other opinions?
As I say, I would obviously say yes to no yellow line, but yes to the white line. But
I would say whatever is most effective in your, you know, history with taking these projects. If it's going to help the situation and slow traffic and slow speeds and help people stop at the stop sign, then that's great.
You know, some things that we do at intersections is just do the center line as you approach the stop sign or the signal. That is kind of the situation on Madison as you approach Neely's. This center line kind of shows back up and has been refurbished, gives you that clue that you're approaching. As a driver, you're approaching an intersection. So we could do it that way. And would probably do it at both of those stop signs. That sounds good.
Amy, I have a 7 o'clock traffic calming meeting with another street in the district. So I'll just wrap up here and jump off. Thank you everyone for joining, for putting this in. And I look forward to getting something done here so that we can help slow cars down. I'm a fervent advocate of this program and it works. So you will see me lobbying in favor of it to the neighbors, answering questions that you have, providing data to show that this is needed, and certainly want to hear from anyone who's opposed to it to understand what those concerns are, to see if we can't allay those and make sure that we are putting forth the best program for us. So thanks so much. Amy, I know you have more information to share with the group, so I look forward to hearing from you tomorrow. I know we'll catch up and see how the rest of the call goes. Thanks, everyone.
Will do. Thank you, Councilwoman. So I will continue on in the rest of the presentation to give you a little more information about next steps, and then maybe we circle back about those centerline markings. This is a flow chart showing how our program kind of runs. Like I said, it's an application program, so residents can apply 2 times a year. Our next application window opens on March 1st, and it's for a 2-week period, I believe. So that's an online application. And then from there, we do our data collection and prioritization and selection period. And then after those streets are selected, we try to schedule these neighborhood meetings. So that's where we are now, is our neighborhood meeting to talk about the program and the plan and next steps. And then from there, we will go and put together a more detailed engineered design. What we're showing now is just a concept, but we need to put together something that shows the dimensions of the roadway, dimensions of exactly where the cushion devices or signs are located, put that on a plan that the contractor can install. And so from the design, if we need to have a second meeting to discuss the plan, again, we certainly can. If that's not necessary, we can move straight into the online ballot phase, so that we communicate with you all and coordinate during this meeting. If we think we need to have a second meeting, we can go ahead and decide to do that or not. But then this program has an online ballot, which is essentially voting. So property owners are given the opportunity to vote, review the plan, vote, and if the results of the ballot are 66% in favor of the project, then the project moves forward towards construction. And so then the construction is about a 10-month to year-long period. We're working to speed that up and get the contractors out there faster. But right now that we're working on about a 10 to 12-month construction period after the ballot closes. So I just want to talk more about the balloting and how that works. Sounds like you all received your mailers announcing this meeting. And so the ballot postcard is very similar to that, but it's an online ballot. And we send the postcards in the mail with a unique ID for those that are eligible to vote. And then it's a 6-week period. So on the ballot card, we'll say the vote closes on a certain date. So when you get that in the mail, you know when it closes. And then there's a QR code that takes you to an online portal to vote, plug in your unique ID. You can vote yes or no for the plan. There's also from that form a link to the plans, those engineered plans. So anyone who's not already familiar with the project gets that postcard. They can review the plan and vote yes or no. And then again, if 66% of the respondents to the vote yes, then the project moves forward. So the picture on the bottom is sort of just the top part of that online ballot form that you would see when you go to the QR code. And on the postcard, it's an explanation about all of this information about voting. And there's a link to NDOT's traffic calming website, as well as a phone number to reach NDOT. So if anyone receives this postcard and for whatever reason cannot vote online, then they can reach out to NDOT directly to get assistance with that. And like I said, it's a 6-week period. And once the balloting closes, we review the votes and post the results on NDOT's traffic calming website, which is TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov. And so you probably want to know who's eligible to vote. This is the voting zone for this particular project. So I've highlighted the properties that are abutting the street. So the properties that have a frontage on the street that we're balloting are eligible to vote. It's one vote per property, and those ballot postcards go to the property owner's address. And so vacant properties are, I don't think we have those, maybe one or two, but vacant properties are not eligible to vote. Businesses are not eligible, but otherwise residential properties, schools, churches get one vote per property. And so that's why we have the unique ID, so we make sure we don't have duplicate votes and so forth. And so there may be, this is the case on many streets, there may be multiple owners, an owner that owns multiple properties on the street, but that owner gets one vote as well. So postcards would go to all of these highlighted property owners. This is my email contact information, as well as the NDOT traffic calming email address. If you want to jot that down, you can reach out. And I also want to show again, the website is TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov. And on this website, there are links to plans. That's where the final plans will be posted, which you'll also be able to navigate to through the ballot postcard. There's also our recorded meetings. So like I said at the beginning, we record these meetings and they're posted on NDOT's website. So if your neighbor is interested, and wasn't able to make the meeting, you can point them in that direction and they'll be able to watch this video and get the same information. So that's all there, as well as our tracker map showing which streets have applied for traffic calming, where they are in the status of receiving getting the project installed. So lots of information on that website. I'm seeing some questions. Let me see. So who asked for traffic cushions? So I'm not sure who the applicant was exactly, but an application was made. The application requires people to fill out a form online. It's open 2 times a year, and we ask for typically 4 households to request the traffic calming through that process. And then the street is evaluated based on the metrics I spoke about with the prioritization, and then selected based on how it ranks against all the other streets that have requested traffic calming.
I have a question. So when the applications come in, because I'm not familiar with that process, I didn't realize there was even a window. Whenever you do traffic calming measures, are cushions usually the first line of defense, regardless of the area? Like that's just kind of standard practice?
We use them the most because they are, we've demonstrated how effective they are, and people really like them. We have a lot of great feedback from where we have had them installed. And so it's typically what residents on streets request, or if we were asking beforehand. But yes, we find them to be the most effective. They're easy to install. They are easy to remove if when the street is repaved. We can pick them up, store them, and put them back after the street is finished, or a stormwater project happens, or anything like that. They're modular like that. But we do look at the characteristics of the street. So there are some streets that may want traffic calming that have volumes that are too high or something like that. And so they wouldn't qualify for the vertical measures. And so those are cases where we might use the radar feedback signs and striping and things like that. But yes, we do use them most often because we find them to be the most effective, and we often can't use the like the chicane example. I'm going to go back in our slides to so the chicanes, we need, in order to add curvature to a road, we need more pavement width in order to make that happen. So your particular street doesn't have extra width. It's only about 21 feet wide. So we can't incorporate a tool like this, and we don't have any narrowing to do with the bulb outs either with that paint. And then the traffic circles are a little bit harder to implement on intersections, because the intersection needs to be so wide in order to fit the circular island in the center of the intersection and still accommodate those larger vehicles that have to navigate around it. So we have limited locations where these are applicable and can be used. So yes, our toolbox is primarily the vertical measures. And that's why, one of the reasons why we do this balloting to communicate what the plan is to the property owners on the street, and allow the street, those that are most affected by the traffic calming and vertical measures, to vote.
Since, maybe I misheard this at the beginning of the call, Emmett is going to be getting the cushions any day now. Is that what the councilwoman said? So,
Yes.
okay. So, based on the timeline you showed us on the screen earlier, we're talking at minimum a year from now that stuff would be happening on Madison Boulevard. That means that the next year is going to suck for all of us. Like, as soon as those traffic or cushions go in on Emmett, everyone's going to start using Madison even more. Is there anything we can do to essentially raise hell and get law enforcement out here? Something like, there are 4 bus stops on Madison Boulevard and people do not watch. We've been almost hit walking our dogs in the morning. Like, if that's going to continue to get worse, what can we do in the meantime? Like, since this looks great, like parts of it sound great, but if we're not talking for another year and traffic's going to get rerouted down Madison Boulevard, like what do you do to support streets that are struggling with that overflow?
Yes. So you can certainly request police enforcement through the police department, and they'll come out as they can and do some enforcement. The signs, like the radar feedback signs, are installed I think through the department instead of the contractor, so that might be something that could come a little earlier, depending on the material, the equipment being ordered and received, that sort of thing. There's also a feedback trailer that you can request, and I believe NDOT has 4 or 5 of those. So it's a radar feedback, and they put it on the side of the road, so it provides that feedback to drivers that are speeding, and they typically will install it for about a week, and then remove it and rotate it around to other streets that have asked for it. So you can ask for that. And I think I mentioned in the beginning of the call maybe, but NDOT is working to speed that construction process along. There's been some hurdles that have come up, and so they've been working hard to smooth that out. And so we're hopeful that the timeline can speed up, but we want to be upfront and transparent that it is a period of time. So I know I don't have a great answer for you, unfortunately, but moving as fast as we can, I think. So I'm gonna read this, the rest of this comment. Asking for they were one of the families asking for the always stop at Madison and Emmett after having seen the 2 wrecks in a week. Yes. Metro Police, after the stop sign was installed, Metro Police, sometime there's no problems with racing wrecks. Yeah, we'd love for the police department to be able to be at every street all the time. They just physically can't do it. There's several streets, like I said in the beginning, there's over 500 streets that are asked for traffic calming. So those are all experiencing similar issues with speeding. And so the police can't be there all the time. So that's why this program focuses on the modification to the street to get that vehicle and drivers to slow down through those measures. And you're asking about the installing measures that damage vehicles over time. We don't hear a lot of complaints about it. NDOT has installed these, their rubberized devices. We've installed them all across the county, all across the city, and we're just not hearing those issues. So I respect your opinion about that, but we're finding that this is the most effective way to reduce speeding on residential streets where we have that issue. So I'd like to start to wrap up unless there's any other questions we need to answer. And so I think what we typically do in these first meetings is determine whether we think we need another meeting or if this is a plan that we want to move forward towards the final design and ballot, then we can just move it along and do that. Or if we want to have another meeting to discuss, we can do that as well. But I'm not hearing I'm hearing that maybe there's some people that don't want the cushions. And I think that would be something that that would vet out through the voting process. And I'm hearing that maybe the center lines are not desired, but we could put them in more strategic places, just at the intersections as you lead up to the intersections, so that it doesn't look like a full-on more main street, if you will, major street. So what I would suggest is that we move forward to the final design and make that modification to the plan to just include the edge lines and perhaps just the approaches to the intersections with the yellow lines. Does that sound like what we want to do? I know it's hard to get this in a virtual meeting discussion, but that's what we're trying to achieve, is some consensus on whether or not to move forward to our next step, or if we want to schedule another meeting. I'm not seeing anything.
I would agree with what you said, as well as the stop bar at the four-way stop, because vehicles do not stop there. So, and it's quite a ways between the cushion that's down near Neely's Bend and then the next one that's, all the way past that four-way stop. So I think that's still going to be a raceway.
Are you saying you like the center line?
I don't have a problem with the center line as you approach the stop signs,
Okay.
more strategically placed rather than all the way down the road. The white lines on the edge of the road, I think that needs to be all the way down.
Yep. Yes, I agree. I think that'll be good. So, I think what we should do is to move forward with creating our final design plan and then, and then moving this into the ballot phase. Cause I'm hearing that there's concern about, Emmett, being installed soon. And then there's going to be a period of time between, when the Madison project, if the vote is successful, if the ballot is favorable, when that would be installed. And so to move this along into the process, I would recommend just not having a second meeting and then sending out the ballot cards with the access to view the final plans on the website. Unless I hear any objections to that, I think that's the step we will go.
No objections from me, but clarifying question. So the ballot, basically all of it passes or none of it passes? Or is it like you're voting on sections where there could be the white lines, but maybe not some other parts? Or is it all or nothing?
That's a great question. So the ballot is really voting on the vertical measures. So if the ballot results are not favorable, if your street doesn't have 66% yes votes, then we could move forward with a plan B. What we would say, it's less intrusive. It would just be things like paint and signs. And so we would put together something. It would probably still include the white edge lines. It may include
The radar feedback.
More radar feedback signs because we wouldn't have the cushions. So we would take the cushions off and do something else with the radar feedback signs, most likely.
Yeah. For what
So-
it's worth, like I am pro cushions if it's gonna get people to slow down. Like I don't love it. I'm not excited about them, but I would much rather, force people to slow down. But that's just me. Thank you so much for organizing this.
You bet. Thanks for your participation. Like I
And
said-
one more question, I'm sorry. If you were to do only the lines and the radar signs and that has no effect, then the process starts all over again, correct?
Well, you would, there would have to be a period of time where we measure and demonstrate that it's not effective, as well as application to reapply and go through that process again of being selected. So it might not be like an immediate analysis and check to see what the results were. There would be a
Okay,
process of reapplying, asking for that comparison data to determine if it's not effective.
okay, thank you.
Mhm. Okay. Well, I will let you all get back to your evening. Again, here's my contact information and NDOT's contact information. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And so what you can expect is we will work on the plans, the design plans, and get those done in the next month or so. And then those postcards will come out with the ballot information. And again, it's not 66% of the whole street that needs to vote. Yes, it's 66% of those that respond to the vote. So that's that. Any other questions before we close out? And Paige, did you take down my information so we can communicate about the?
Yeah.
Great. And Mr. Moore, I will be contacting you about the data and location of the counts.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all. I appreciate it.